Aston Martin has just detonated the biggest announcement of the season by confirming that Adrian Newey will take full control of the team as team principal in the year 2026, a move so shocking that it instantly reshapes the future of Fernando Alonso and the entire direction of the sport. The internal briefing reveals that Andy Cowell is being removed from operational command after months of growing tension with Newey over the design of the 2026 project, opening the door for Newey to take absolute authority over the car concept, the structure, and the long-term vision of the team. This promotion gives Newey the power to dictate every strategic and technical decision during the biggest rule change Formula One has seen in decades, and it places Aston Martin on a trajectory that could either transform them into a championship threat or expose the vulnerabilities that have slowed their progress this year. And before I show you why this is extraordinary news for Fernando Alonso and how it changes everything for 2026, make sure you subscribe right now, because the next updates around this story will be explosive and you do not want to miss what comes next. The announcement that Adrian Newey will assume full command of Aston Martin in the year 2026 arrives at a moment when the team is facing one of the most complex transitions in its history. The organization has spent the last 2 seasons chasing consistency while trying to stabilize its technical structure, and the news confirms that the leadership believes a complete shift in authority is necessary. With the next regulation cycle approaching rapidly, this decision is not a symbolic move but a strategic intervention aimed at rebuilding the team around a single vision. The presence of Newey at the top of the structure signals a decisive break from previous internal conflicts and places the future of the team in the hands of the sport's most successful designer. The internal documentation released during the Qatar weekend explains that this decision was not spontaneous but the result of months of internal analysis. Aston Martin had already invested heavily in infrastructure, including the new wind tunnel and the advanced simulator, but the results on track did not reflect the potential of these assets. Newey had been increasingly vocal about inconsistencies in the modeling tools and their limited correlation with real-world behavior. The leadership concluded that if the team wanted to maximize these resources for the 2026 concept, they needed the person with the clearest technical instinct to take direct control. This created the environment that led to his appointment. The context surrounding Andy Cowell's change of role provides another crucial layer. Cowell arrived with strong experience in hybrid powertrain development, but the 2026 rules require a philosophy that blends aerodynamics, energy recovery, and chassis integration with absolute precision. According to the internal briefings, tensions emerged when Cowell and Newey disagreed over how aggressively the team should reshape its technical departments. The organization felt split between 2 competing approaches, and as the season progressed, the lack of a unified direction began to affect efficiency. This structural friction is what ultimately pushed the leadership to consolidate authority under Newey. The shift in leadership occurs at a time when Formula One prepares for a generational transformation. The 2026 regulations redefine every aspect of car behavior, with equal power distribution between combustion and electric systems, and with active aerodynamic surfaces altering the way drivers manage performance. This requires an approach where every component is designed with a unified concept rather than a collection of isolated solutions. Newey's philosophy has always emphasized the interconnected nature of performance, and the decision to place him at the highest level reflects the belief that Aston Martin must adopt this exact mindset to compete. It is a response to the scale of the upcoming challenge. The announcement also reflects how much urgency exists inside the Aston Martin project. The team entered 2024 with expectations of fighting near the front, but the performance decline exposed weaknesses in decision-making and communication. Placing Newey in charge is an attempt to remove ambiguity by giving the organization a single reference point for all technical and strategic choices. The internal notes emphasize that the car of 2026 will rely on thousands of new components that cannot be recycled from the previous generation. This means the next development cycle starts almost from zero and requires a foundation strong enough to support rapid progress without confusion. Newey becomes that foundation. For Fernando Alonso, the context matters even more. He joined Aston Martin believing the project would deliver the most competitive machine of his final years in the sport, and the difficulties of 2025 made that future uncertain. The arrival of Newey as team principal restores the sense of direction that Alonso felt had been fading. The internal briefing shows that Alonso has maintained confidence in Newey's judgment even during this challenging season. With full authority concentrated under one of the most successful engineers in the history of Formula One, the next phase becomes the clearest opportunity for Alonso to compete at a high level under the new rules. This is why the news has generated such strong reaction across the paddock. The primary problem inside Aston Martin before Adrian Newey's appointment was the lack of a unified technical direction. The organization had invested heavily in facilities and senior personnel, yet the performance of the car did not show the progress expected from such expansion. The internal report highlighted how the team struggled to translate its resources into consistent results. This inconsistency revealed an underlying issue. The leadership structure was fragmented and key departments were not operating under a shared vision. When a team prepares for a complete regulatory overhaul, this type of fragmentation becomes the greatest risk because it disrupts the coherence needed to build a competitive concept from the ground up. Another major complication emerged from the differing philosophies between Andy Cowell and Adrian Newey. Cowell approached the 2026 project with a focus on power unit integration, reliability, and procedural efficiency, while Newey emphasized aerodynamic synergy and the need for a holistic interpretation of the new rules. The internal briefings describe repeated disagreements about simulation tools, test protocols, and design priorities. These disagreements slowed progress because engineers received contrasting signals from two senior leaders. The confusion reduced development speed and created uncertainty about which direction would guide the 2026 car. The lack of performance from the current car amplified these internal tensions. The AMR-25 did not deliver the results expected despite improvements in the wind tunnel simulator and computational systems. This led Newey to question not only the execution but the structural logic behind some of the decision-making processes. According to the internal documentation, Newey expressed concerns about how the team interpreted data and how certain departments were organized. When such criticism comes from the person the organization trusts most for technical judgment, it creates a situation where the existing leadership must be re-evaluated. The internal report also revealed that progress on the 2026 project was slower than projected. With a rule set that requires designing almost every component from zero, delays become dangerous. Newey made it clear that the team needed sharper alignment between chassis design, power unit integration, and aerodynamic modeling. Instead, the structure under Cowell had developed into a layered system with too many independent channels. This created delays in feedback loops and resulted in modeling inconsistencies that would have been unacceptable under the upcoming regulations. These delays became one of the strongest signals that a leadership shift was necessary. The situation worsened when senior engineers began expressing doubts about the internal hierarchy. Several high-level figures were unsure which technical philosophy to follow, and this uncertainty reflected the deeper structural imbalance. When a team does not know whose direction governs the project, the engineering output becomes cautious and fragmented. The internal notes confirm that at least 7 senior technical members were removed as part of a restructuring driven by Newey's influence. This indicated that the leadership had lost coherence to a point where only a complete reorganization would restore control. The confusion within the ranks became the strongest evidence that the team was no longer functioning under a clear collective identity. The final expression of the problem came from the fact that time was rapidly running out. With the 2026 regulations approaching, a team can no longer sustain philosophical disagreements at the top. Every successful project requires a single guiding concept, and the report made it clear that Aston Martin was operating without one. The organizational friction slowed development at the precise moment when the team needed unity the most. This combination of declining performance, unclear hierarchy, conflicting visions, and an unforgiving timeline produced a scenario that demanded decisive action. The promotion of Adrian Newey to team principal was the response to this crisis, a structural reset designed to eliminate ambiguity and create a singular pathway toward competitiveness. The engineering pressure at Aston Martin increased dramatically as the 2026 regulations shifted the technical foundations of the sport. The internal report explains that Newey repeatedly highlighted how the new rules would require a complete reimagining of car architecture, from aerodynamic surfaces to energy management systems. The footage included in the briefing shows Newey emphasizing that the upcoming generation of cars cannot rely on incremental evolution. Instead, they must be created as entirely new machines with a unified philosophy at the center. Aston Martin's previous structure had not produced that unity, and the internal analysis concluded that without a clear authoritative voice, the team would risk falling behind before the first test even begins. One of the most important points shown in the documentation is the scale of component redesign required for 2026. Newey explained that a modern Formula One car contains close to 15,000 parts, and that nearly all of them must be rebuilt for the new era. The hybrid structure changes the weight distribution, the aerodynamics, the packaging of cooling systems, and the geometry of the chassis. The footage shows Newey explaining that the power unit layout from Honda must work in perfect harmony with the aerodynamic concept, and that any mismatch could compromise the entire project. This level of integration creates enormous technical pressure because the team must align every department around a single vision that previously did not exist. The internal briefing also revealed that Newey had growing concerns about the accuracy of simulation tools used by Aston Martin. He described inconsistencies in correlation between digital predictions and track behavior and expressed that the team needed to refine its modeling tools before committing to major design decisions. With the new regulations reducing ground effect and increasing reliance on active aerodynamic surfaces, any error in simulation could jeopardize months of work. The organization realized that these concerns required immediate structural action. The report states that the team's new wind tunnel and simulator offer potential but require unified leadership to ensure that development is guided by coherent analysis instead of departmental fragmentation.